first conversation of the day, and that has to do with real estate. Now, a lot of individuals will tune into this program and will think about this decision because this is probably the most important financial decision that you will ever make. It requires quite a considerable amount of capital, and quite a few number of times you won't have that capital readily available, which means that you will have to take a large loan, and that loan is usually repayable over a period of 10 to 15 to even 20 years. Let's bring in the expert then. Prableen Bajpai is joining in. Prableen, first of all, let's talk about rental yield, because I think this is a concept that a lot of people don't understand, even though it's a very simple concept. So let's first talk about that, and then we'll talk about real estate as an investment class. How would you explain rental yield?
Good evening, Alex, and I hope that you're feeling better now. Rental yield, simply put, is the amount of money that you're going to earn annually from a property if it's given out on rent, divided by the value of that property, and of course in percentage terms. So for example, Alex, a property, let's say I bought a property for 50 lakh rupees and today it's giving me a rental of 20,000 a month, which roughly makes it about 2,40,000 yearly. So 2,40,000 divided by 50,000 into 100 gives me a rental yield of 4.8%. Now, this is the gross rental yield because none of the maintenance expenses, taxation is included in this. So let's say I deduct the maintenance charges, going towards the society or the area. I subtract the taxes, municipal taxes. Then I get my net rental yield. And if that amount, let's say annually, I need to pay about 50,000 rupees. So that gets subtracted from whatever I've earned. And after deducting that, my rental yield actually falls to about 3.8%. So it's simply the amount of money that you're going to earn from the property on a yearly basis divided by the value of the property. And Alex, broadly in India, we are seeing that the rental yields are in the range of 3 to 4.5% gross, and the net rental yields work out to be in the range of 2 to 3.5%. So while property does, provide you the benefit of capital appreciation as well, on a regular basis, the earnings may not be as high as we sometimes think it to be.
Okay, that's, I think, explaining it very well. So would you then, I know there is no like-to-like comparison, but since in this case, Prableen, a lot of people talk about, especially when they retire, using this as passive income. Of course, the rental yield is on a larger base. So you're talking about a property that could be between 50 lakhs and 75 lakhs or even 1 crore. And that 2.5% therefore is a significant chunk of that. But if you think about fixed income investments also yielding more than that, would you say then from that perspective that real estate is not the most efficient investment option?
I think a few points, Alex, over here. Number one, that, it depends how have you actually made that property. Let's say during your work years, you take a nominal loan and you're able to build a property, and later during your retirement years, you're just earning a rental from that. I think that's a decent option because over a period of time, that property has now appreciated. Probably that is not what you'd actually bought it for, and it's okay to keep earning that rent, and on the other side your property is appreciating. I think the problem lies in the fact when we try and over concentrate whatever we have earned, let's say in our lifetime, and around our retirement time we are looking to create passive income, and we pick this sort of a lumpy asset for ourselves because it can actually take away anywhere between 40 to 50 to 80 lakhs as well into one particular asset class, into one product, into that one house that we are planning to buy. And I think that is not a very sensible thing to do, because if you are parking your money at the time of retirement, then there are other options, like you said, other fixed income options as well, which can give you a decent income on a regular basis. Because I think the point at the time of your retirement is that you're looking to earn from it rather than really looking at the capital appreciation. So buying early on and it rewards you later is okay, but going and buying at the time of retirement, I think, is not a very wise decision. Also, given that there are taxations which are not very, very favorable.
Would you be able to tell us how that taxation works? Because it's not a straightforward, tax at the slab rate, right?
So, Alex, as far as in a simple way, if I have to put it, the gross annual value, whatever you are earning from your rental property, from that we deduct the taxation part. I mean, the municipal taxes, the well tax that one has paid, and then the net of that, you can claim a 30% deduction under Section 24A. And if a loan has been taken, then of course the further deduction equivalent to your loan amount can also be made. But if you're buying something at the time of retirement, then obviously that probably loan component is not going to be there, but a 30% deduction is there. And whatever you're earning after that is taxed at your slab. So it is not a very, very lucrative taxation. And I think the benefits here are that there's always a sense of security. And, I think as Indians, we like the idea of building these hard assets, that I've got an apartment here and I've got another house in another city. But I think as one ages, it becomes difficult to manage multiple properties. There will be, every year you have to go and do the rent deeds, and you have to ensure that your tenant are people who will eventually vacate. So those are the, little flip side. And of course, the call has to be made by the person based on his or her situation.
Now, just as we discuss alternatives to physical gold, the alternatives to a physical asset in real estate also exist here in India, though the options are limited. I'm talking about REITs. Prableen, could you explain the concept and what are the options available here in India? Do you see the space developing over the course of the next coming years?
Right. So, Alex, you've just put it, in the best possible way, that just like we hold physical gold. So instead of doing all that, safety mechanism, where do we put that gold? You have to buy a locker and things, it's lumpy. Similar is, instead of going in for a real estate property, we go and buy units of a REIT. Now, REIT is a real estate investment trust, and it is in its working, it's something similar to a mutual fund where people pool in money, a trust is formed, and that trust is then going and, parking that money. So currently in India, the SEBI guidelines of 2014, govern this whole space, and it's still a relatively new segment. So the REITs hold a portfolio mostly of commercial properties like offices and hotels and hospitality malls, which are likely to give a higher rental. So from that point of view, it becomes lucrative, because as compared to residential properties, commercial properties tend to give a better rental. Secondly, Alex, in these, 80% of the money has to be parked in anything that is going to generate a rent right away. And only 20% of the money can be parked in, let's say, giving nominal loans or, investing in anything which is under construction. And REITs as a structure, whatever their net, taxable income is there, they have to pay out 90% of their earnings to their investors in three formats. One can be the dividends, second can be as interest income, and the third can be as amortization of the debt.
Okay. This is interesting. There aren't many that are listed, and listing is mandatory for REITs here in India, right? According to the regulations. Since it is dividend income, then the taxation is on those dividends, right? It's in the hands of the recipient of the dividend, right?
So Alex, there's, it's not as simple. It's not one sort of a taxation here. Firstly, that there are currently 3 REITs in India. One is the Brookfield India Real Estate Trust, second in the Embassy Office Parks, and the third is Mindspace Business Parks. And all these 3 companies are listed on the stock exchange. So as an investor, if I want to go and take exposure to real estate in my portfolio during my retirement years, or to generate some sort of a passive income, I can go and buy stocks of these companies, and these companies pay out a dividend or interest income on a regular basis. We actually also have mutual funds in India which invest in REITs, but none of them actually invest in REITs in India. They are providing exposure to real estate outside India. but they do not pay a dividend or interest income on a regular basis. Whatever they earn gets added to their NAV. Now, as far as the regular REITs in India are concerned, taxation is in different formats. Number one, Alex, is that interest income. So it is taxable in the hands of the unit holders, the interest that they pay. Second part is the dividend income. So there is a format which is sent out by REIT. So, that will have a breakup of what component, how much is, what kind of income that the investor is earning. So the second component can be the dividend. Now, dividend again varies from REIT to REIT. If the REIT is taking some concessions from the government, then the dividend becomes taxable in the hands of the investor. But if that exemption is not taken by the REIT from the government, then it is tax-free in the hands of the investors. That is the second type of income. Third is the amortization of the SPV, which is the special purpose vehicle. And that part is again non-taxable. So from a taxation point of view, overall, Alex, it's a lucrative option. It is not very highly taxed. And the other way that one can earn is that I buy stocks today of a REIT. And when I sell them, I can earn capital gains, and that I pay as regular capital gains, which is equivalent to the regular equity taxation.
Okay, so from what you're describing, this is actually in the with the intention, Prableen, of having a well-diversified portfolio where you're talking about a good balance of all the asset classes. You're talking about equity, you're talking about fixed income, you're talking about gold, you're talking about real estate. With that in mind, considering the lumpy nature of real estate acquisitions, this is a good option to consider. Between mutual funds and REITs, however, how should one go about doing this?
Mutual funds in India, Alex, as I said, they will not give you a regular payout. So whatever dividend or interest income they will earn from the parent REIT, the master fund abroad, let's say there is one from Kotak, there is one from PGIM, there is one from Mahindra. Now, the Kotak International REIT actually invests about 48% in Singapore. There is exposure to Hong Kong. There's exposure to Singapore, Australia, Thailand. But whatever they earn gets added to the NAV. So it is more from the point of view of capital appreciation and not from the point of view of regular income. Because even if that mutual fund is going to give you a dividend, it gets taxed at slab. So it becomes less lucrative. So I think the better option then, if you're looking at mutual funds for REITs, is from the point of view of capital appreciation, diversifying outside India. Within India, I think the regular REITs are a decent option. Maybe 10 to 15% exposure in a portfolio can be taken. But of course, real estate can move up and downs with how economic cycles are. So one has to be wary of that there can be losses instead of capital gains as well, though they may be paying you on a regular basis, even during downturns.
So is this true for most cases that the percentage that you just mentioned as a percentage of your assets as a whole, for a lot of people that currently own real estate, this will not be true, right, Prableen? So what I'm trying to ask is, if you have not acquired a property, what is the extent? You keep it at 15%?
I will say that, Alex, it won't be right to replace a REIT with a house that you live in, right? So real estate, one home from the point of view of living, I think is a good idea. But then over investing into one asset class because it's less liquid, there is too much of concentration. And we've seen that that even in real estate, the prices are not zooming at the same pace. And the appreciation may not be as high as one thinks it to be. That, I buy an apartment today and 4 years down the line, I want to sell it at double the price. That is not happening. So from staying point of view, you have one asset, that's okay. But I think beyond that, this 5, 10, 15 or 20% allocation is good enough depending on your requirements and overall risk profile.
I guess in that sense, it is comparable to jewelry that you buy, right? Because you don't really sell family jewelry. You keep it for posterity, you transfer it to your children. Just like that, the home that you live in, you don't really think that you're going to sell it at some point of time. But having said that, speaking of that home that you live in, this is a concept, the final concept that I wanted to talk to you about with regard to real estate is reverse mortgages. this is not really something that a lot of Indians, I think, would be comfortable with, purely because of the way that they view real estate and the amount of work that is involved in acquiring that real estate, Prableen. But why is this concept something that people should consider in certain situations?
Real estate, Alex, I think as Indians, we are all emotional people. We don't want to part away, like you said, with the jewelry. Probably, we bought on certain special occasions. Likewise, home is something that I think we are all very emotional about. But even I have come across cases, and I'm sure there are many cases out there where we've seen that senior citizens have a good real estate property, but do not have the cash flows to actually run their a home. And they may not have children. Sometimes children are not as supportive as maybe they should be. So at that point, I feel reverse mortgage becomes a very good option for a senior citizen who is struggling a bit with generation of regular cash flows. How this works is that you mortgage your house, the house that one person is living in. You have to be 60 and above, with a bank, and the bank will assess the price of that property, the value of that property, Alex. And then they keep this margin of about 20% with them, and the remaining they are happy to pay you in the form of a lump sum on a regular basis, depending on the model that is picked. Here I'll give you an example. If you go to the website of Punjab National Bank, the current breakup, what it shows is that if you mortgage your house for a period of 10 years, they are happy to pay you 501 rupees per lakh. So if your property is worth 1 crore, which is the ceiling, which is the uppermost ceiling here, then you can generate a monthly income of 50,100. If the tenure goes to 15 years, then what you can generate on a monthly basis is about 25,000. And maybe that is the kind of money a couple who is struggling in their old age, to meet their ends, it can come in very handy. The good part here is that they do not need to vacate the house even after that 10-year period. So the couple can keep staying. And how this property gets free later is that the couple can keep staying till the time they're alive. After their death, there are two options. That the legal is go to the bank and say, okay, what is the outstanding loan amount that we need to pay along with the interest, and they clear it up and free the property. Obliques, Alex, the bank will auction the property, and if they've recovered their loan amount and the interest, the remaining is paid to the legal heir.
Okay, that clarifies already the question that I was going to ask, probably. And I think it's a concept that, while it is intriguing, it is something that I think people will reserve as a last option,
Yes.
because it's not something that I think a lot of people will be comfortable with. But still, it's good to know that that option is available. Thank you so much, Prableen, for taking
Alex,
the time.
one
I think
thing
we've
I
had
like
quite
to...
an expansive conversation about real estate.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Please.
you, Alex. Okay, I just wanted to add that the money that they're earning from reverse mortgage, Alex, is tax-free. So they do not have to pay a tax on that. So that's the bonus here. And other things I've already mentioned.
No, absolutely. I think that is certainly something to bear in mind. And like I said, in certain situations, and you pointed out also, in certain situations, this is something that might be a boon and something certainly to consider. Thank you so much, Prableen, for taking the time. All right. Now, after this very quick break, we have another conversation lined up for you. And this relates to your long-term goals and investing in the equity markets. Do stay tuned.